Hello, and today we're going to do a Royal Talk video. Today's subject will be Princess Charlotte of Wales, who was the daughter of George IV and his wife, the only legitimate child for many, many years. She, of course, would, if she had lived, become Queen of England instead of her cousin Victoria. But, like I said in both of her parents' videos, she was born into a loveless marriage. Parents only really spent almost about 5 months together, and then when it became clear that her mother was pregnant, her father almost completely left his wife and very rarely ever saw her again. Of course, her father was very disappointed when it finally came out that she was a girl, but not wishing to have to be with his wife ever again, he put up with it and hoped that perhaps one of his brothers would have a male legitimate child. So, throughout her childhood, she was basically a tennis ball in the match between her parents that were just trying to get the upper hand on each other, influencing their daughter and hoping that their daughter preferred to be with the mother or the father. And when it became quite clear that Charlotte preferred to be with her mother, her father George actually took her away and put her into her own section of one of his houses in London, and forbid any of the servants to let her mother in. So, and really this was how her life was right up to when she got married. She spent all of her time living in her own house from the age of around 7. All she ever had for company was her servants, and of course they couldn't be trusted like friends. They couldn't be, anything to her. But over the years, when she got up, as she got to know her servants, she was able to find weak chinks in her father's plan, and she was able to persuade those particular servants to send notes to her mother. And when she knew her father was away, she would send notes to her mother to say, "You can come and visit me today, and we can spend a couple of hours. We can have tea. We can talk. We can go and walk in the garden. We can do what mothers and daughters are meant to do." Throughout her childhood and her teenage years, she was able to capture these little few hours of time with her mother, and through this, her and her mother were able to build up quite a strong relationship. And fortunately, the servants, once they became very aware of what was happening, and the servants that were less frightened of the Prince Regent, they were persuaded by the other servants that were favoured by the princess to let this carry on and not tell their master. So, and over the years, obviously, she was able to ask her mother for advice and just become more of a person. And of course, she got to spend some time with her grandparents. She got to spend some time with her many uncles and aunts, and she tried her best to have fun. But as she got older and older, she began to rebel. She didn't wait for her father to leave London, even if he would never do it while he was in the palace with her. But if he was in another palace of his in London, which he had many, he would send word to her mother to say, "You can come over." And it would have been very difficult for her father to storm in and get her mother to leave if she was already there. So and of course, as she got older, when she got revealed in court, and she became more involved in court life, people began to say that she didn't know how to behave, she didn't know how to act properly, she didn't know how to behave in proper royal court surroundings, which of course isn't her own fault. It's down to the fact that her father never taught her, didn't give her enough time to learn things properly. All he ever did was he shut her up into a palace and left her to be taught by servants, which of course didn't happen because she didn't think it was necessary and she didn't really care. And so of course over the years her father did try and instill in her some pieces of advice that he believed would be important to her when she became queen. And he would send her away on holidays and Brighton and places like that and so forth. And of course she did have quite a lot of fun and quite a lot of holidays down in the palace where her father had built, of course, which was the Brighton Pavilion. And so yes, she did have, even though she was locked away and she very rarely got to see anyone else than her servants, she did make the best of it. Then of course it came to the point of when her father decided that she should get married, and there was quite a few possible suitors. You had William of Orange, who was the heir apparent to the throne of the Netherlands. You had her cousin, William of Gloucester, who she herself would have married if she wanted to. Then there was a few other suitors that herself she fancied or she approved of. Her father would not have approved of most of them, one of them being the supposed illegitimate son of her uncle, the Duke of York. Then of course she met in London the man that she would marry, Prince Leopold. Now Leopold himself was in the army. He looked very handsome, he looked very gentlemanly, and he, in her own words, she believed him to be one of the most beautiful men she'd ever seen. And with this, the infatuation began. And when they first met, he actually wrote a letter to her father and saying, I'm sorry that I spent so much time in your palace with your daughter. I did not mean to spend so much time with her, but she is such a delightful and such a beautiful lady that I felt that I need to give her honour. And because of this, George himself started to think that he might be a very good son-in-law and may be able to calm down his wild daughter. And so that's obviously what happened. So they got engaged. She accepted, and then it became national news. And they would go to the theatre together. They would go shopping together. They would be seen in the centre of London. And there was even reports of people cheering them when they were going down the street or at the theatre or things like that. And one particular person sang "God Save the King" to her once. And actually he said, one day I wish to be saying that to you. So, when the marriage when the engagement was happening, everyone was so happy because people actually loved the princess. She was seen as the future and the hope of the country, and just generally the monarchy, of course. But on another level, they saw her as the product of a man that the majority of the country despised, and people often thought that she couldn't be blamed for her father, but her father was a wicked man, and the fact that something so good and so pure has come from such a wicked man, that they loved her for it. And so when the glorious day happened and the wedding happened, they were cheering. There were many people around London and around the country that were happy, and that they wanted to support this marriage. They wanted it to happen, and that Charlotte and Leopold would have a long and happy marriage together. Then once the wedding had finished, they went off onto honeymoon, and reports were made in the papers about their honeymoon and things like that, and saying where they'd gone, and once they returned, what kind of things they might have got up to whilst on honeymoon. Long walks and fabulous dinners and things like that. And then, of course, the speculation, the long-awaited news began to surface. When would Leopold and Charlotte have their child? When would she become pregnant? And then it happened. It was announced in the papers that Princess Charlotte was with child. Everyone was delighted. All of her royal relatives were so pleased. But this also gave Charlotte's father, George, one more opportunity to stop her from seeing her mother. And during the period of the pregnancy, George tried his utmost not to let his wife see their daughter. Now, of course, we all know that when she finally gave birth, she gave birth to a stillborn baby boy. And, of course, very distressing for her, very disappointing for Leopold, and made her father George incredibly angry, because he felt, why couldn't this male be born alive, and we could have had a male heir? But so once she'd been relaxed and calmed, and Leopold, after a very long pregnancy, was exhausted. He'd stayed up with his wife the whole labour, and he was exhausted, so he retired to his bedchamber. And around 12 o'clock at night, there was a scream from Princess Charlotte's bedchamber, and she'd worsened. She'd become cold to the touch. And they called for the physician and everyone to come as quickly as they possibly could. Servants tried to wake Leopold, who strangely enough couldn't be woken, and soon afterwards she died, which of course meant there was no heir to the throne. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you next week. Bye bye.